Well, first of all, thank you so much for being here today. We're here today with the mayor of Allentown, Pennsylvania, Mayor Tuerk. Thank you for being here. I know you're a busy guy. We were talking about this earlier, that you have to go meet and greet and shake hands with so many people. So to come here for a very short period of time, we're very thankful having you here today.
I'm really, really, really happy to talk about something that is near and dear to my heart, which is my city of Allentown, Pennsylvania.
Yeah, this is exciting. So for people who don't totally know, Josh Thomas and I run policy and communications of flock safety. And the thing that I care the most about is I want to think about kind of the long-term impact of how flock is trying to help communities like yourself deal with issues that you have today, but also help the community thrive in the long run. Mm-hmm. It's not just about stopping problems. That is our mission, is to eliminate crime. But at the end of the day, like, I look at that and ask the question of, like, okay, but so what if you deliver on the mission of eliminating crime? What's the long-term goal that you have here? And it feels very aligned with the things that you and I have talked a little bit about. But before we get into all that,
sure,
if you wouldn't mind, I'd love for the people who maybe don't know that much about Allentown, or maybe they've been to an amusement park nearby, maybe could you tell us a little bit about the city, a little bit about what's this part of the country really like?
Well, if you go back to 1762 and William Allen, no, I'm just kidding. We're not going to go back that far. And I could go back to 1982 and the Billy Joel song, which some people are familiar with, but I won't do that either. Allentown is the third largest city in Pennsylvania. We are a newly majority Latino city. We are a city that has grown a lot over 20 years and developed a lot over 20 years and changed a lot over 20 years. We are very close. I think a lot of people can't put Allentown on a map when they're looking at the state of Pennsylvania. Yeah. Allentown is actually much closer to New York City than it is to Pittsburgh.
Interesting.
We're about an hour and a half north of Philly and about 2 hours west of Manhattan. We are a city that is the beating heart of the Lehigh Valley, which is one of the most dynamic regions in Pennsylvania and is the home of Bethlehem Steel, or formerly the home of Bethlehem Steel, Bethlehem, Pennsylvania, and Easton, Pennsylvania. You might know us by some of our brands. Crayola crayons are manufactured in the Lehigh Valley. Martin Guitar is produced in the Lehigh Valley. Those little marshmallow peeps that you eat at Easter time, those are manufactured in Bethlehem, and Allentown is the home of Mack trucks. So a lot of cool things coming out of our region. But if you do go back to that Billy Joel song, it's a region that had fallen on tough times after seeing a lot of growth, but recently has really turned around and become a place that becomes politically important every 4 years. We see every time there's a presidential election, we see journalists from around the globe descend on Allentown and the Lehigh Valley because it's a bellwether for presidential elections. So it's a really, I think it's a classic mid-sized American city. It's a mid-sized American city that is changing a lot and changing in a lot of the same ways that the United States is changing. So
yeah, I mean, it sounds like very representative of what a lot of people, maybe you don't envision this is what America is, but it really is. This is what it is, where you do, yes, there's industry, there's history, but also it's not a major sized city. It's a big city. There's a lot of stuff here. But that's actually very representative of what a lot of America,
correct,
I imagine, feels like.
I like to say, one of the things that I like to say about Allentown is that it's big enough to be important, big enough to matter, but small enough that you can wrap your arms around it and give it a hug and understand it. I think there's a lot of places like that around the country. There's more places like Allentown in the United States than there are Chicago or New York.
That's right.
I think that when people get to know the challenges that a city like Allentown faces, they see how that shows up in their communities as well.
So let's get into that topic real quick. I'd love to just get your context on this, because actually this is your first time actually serving in an elected office.
Correct,
right? Yeah. And so your background it's not like you grew up in politics your whole life.
No, not at all.
You did a lot of other things. I was reading a little bit about your background, and you've actually lived a lot of different places around the country and around the world.
Yeah.
And then you find yourself back here in Allentown, Pennsylvania. Walk us through, if you wouldn't mind, the year or two preceding your decided to throw your hat in the ring and say, I want to help serve this community. What was that like the couple of years before that, what was kind of the environment in Allentown like? What inspired you in that time to be like, you know what, I think that I have an opportunity to serve this community?
So my job was the vice president of economic development and marketing for the Lehigh Valley Economic Development Corporation. So fundamentally, I had a responsibility to tell the story of the Lehigh Valley in a way that would convince somebody who is making a location decision for a company to make that location decision in the Lehigh Valley. So I traveled to places like Seattle and Tampa and Shanghai, China, talking about how the Lehigh Valley was a great place to invest. And a lot of the story for years in economic development was talking about how utility rates were low, or there was a friendly business climate, or taxes were low. It shifted at some point in the mid 2010s to be more about labor and where people were. So I spent a lot of time just thinking about how to position the place that I lived in and the place that I loved to be an attractive investment location for companies. I think that the decision to run for mayor, the guy who immediately preceded me, really good guy, named Ray O'Connell, who served the city for a long time as a school district administrator. Heart was absolutely in the right place, but he wasn't the person who really had that facility to get out and tell the story of Allentown like I did. And I remember vividly, and it's probably late 2019, we were launching a community and economic development plan for the city of Allentown. And my thought was, I think I need to be the person to step up and do this. And then, like, for many people, March 2020 showed up and everything went off the rails.
Yes.
For me, as I'm a marathon runner, I spent a lot of time running. I would go out on these 2-hour runs without anything to listen to.
God bless you.
And I'd have the thoughts in my own head. And I started to craft an idea about how I might be able to serve the people of Allentown as their mayor and do something a little bit different. So I consulted with my wife during the COVID lockdown and decided to leave my position at the Economic Development Corporation and run for mayor of Allentown. It was a fantastic decision for me. I had a lot of support from my family, and I was able to speak to something that the residents of the city of Allentown were looking for. They were looking for somebody who had that background in economic development and business attraction, but also somebody who had a vision for the city as a place where families can thrive and businesses can prosper, but also had a vision for a city that took more of a prominent position on the national stage, and then somebody who had a ton of energy, right? So I am out and about all the time, engaging with my community and trying to understand exactly what challenges the neighbors face and how we might resolve them in collaboration as a city.
So that I think is just tremendous, because first of all, I think one of the things that I love to hear about your story in particular is it's one where, again, this wasn't your background that you had done this your whole life and you had always had the aspiration that, one day I'm going to be the mayor of the town and therefore I'm going to chart out what does it take to get there. It actually went from the opposite perspective of my job is to try to help sell people on why this is a great place, because you already loved it.
Yeah.
And then now it's like, oh, I already do this as part of my life. What if I just took this to another level? And that's a really inspiring story on its own. But I'd love to hear when you were having those conversations directly with people, both in the campaign and maybe in your first, term in office, what are some of the challenges that you kept hearing about? What are the things that people were feeling and dealing with that they would tell you, these are the things that I see as like the biggest issues that we need to address?
I mean, whenever you take a leadership position in any city, you're going to hear a lot of
tons of stuff,
the same things, right? And you hear a lot, and I think that the more you open yourself up to feedback, the better you do. So when I spoke with residents in the city, they had concerns about things like roadway safety. This is something that came up over and over again. They had concerns about public safety and what life was like in the neighborhoods. They had concerns about transportation and the ability to get to good jobs. They had concerns about the educational system, which is outside of the span of control for a mayor in a city like Allentown. But it's something that people were thinking about. And so people are thinking about how to build a better life for themselves in neighborhoods in Allentown, and trying to understand how to create a future for their kids. And it keeps coming back to that feeling of safety and cleanliness, right? I had an old boss who had previously been the mayor of the city of Bethlehem, and he would say, like, look, man, being a mayor is simple. Just keep it safe and keep it clean. And that was absolutely what people were telling me. They wanted it safe. They wanted it clean. So I committed my team to building a safer, cleaner, and healthier Allentown that promoted the well-being of our residents, to start to understand what are the factors that contribute to health. How can we, through a combination of efforts, give people healthy outcomes? And that's really what we brought people in the administration around together, was collaborating to build that safer, cleaner, healthier city.
So let's jump into that piece of it. So could you help maybe paint the picture a little bit of, you want to create a healthier outcomes for people, but you have to prioritize a lot of different resources of your time, of the taxpayer dollars, of your energy, of your administration's energy. How do you prioritize? Like, where do you need to spend time as you're thinking through those different layers of the community's overall health?
Yeah, I think there's a few things that are critically important when it comes to prioritization of resource deployment, and one of them is just kind of being priority really needs to be on being in community, right? Whoever those public servants are, making sure that they're getting a chance to work arm in arm with neighbors. So looking for ways that facilitate that. And I want to credit our chief of police is like my right-hand man, as it should be the case for all mayors. Like, our fundamental responsibility is public safety. And our chief, Charles Roca, is focused heavily on kind of three pillars of policing in his estimation, which is staffing, training, and technology. Making sure that we can get people out and engaging with the community through leveraging technology, and making sure that people are well equipped to deal with whatever situations are in front of them. So when you're looking for balance, you know that the little investments that you can make in indirect things sometimes have a significant outcome on what really matters, which is, again, it's that community health, and that's driven by safe and clean. So for me, a priority is, where can we invest in ways that free up resources to do the things that matter, which is be in dialogue with our neighbors. So we always looked for ways that we could do that.
Yeah, I love that, because that's part of like Flock's underlying mission here, is we want to build tools and technology that help cities really do their jobs better, more efficiently, more safely. There's a lot of things that we have built where, like, the first product being our license plate reader, and I'm not trying to sell the product, but the idea is just that the goal of it was, how do you provide better objective evidence to law enforcement? There was a premise there that said, the challenge is today, officers want to do their job. They want to solve crime. They're just missing the key evidence. And they're missing the right type of evidence, which is objective evidence. It's very easy to have somebody call into 911 and you get a description of a human, and then it's like, well, then be on the lookout for somebody with these kind of subjective factors, maybe skin tones or heights or whatever it may be, and who knows what you're looking for. But a license plate reader can give you kind of that objective evidence that said, no, it's this specific car, only go stop that one car. And to your point, then, it actually helps be more precise for law enforcement to go do their job more efficiently. And so I know that you and I talked about this a little bit beforehand, that one of the things you want to think about is like that resource allocation, that if an officer can go get that one thing quickly and stop it, that means they can go do all these other things that you actually want them to be doing more of, but they're inundated with all these calls for service in the old school way without technology. Frankly, just didn't allow them to do the things that you want them to do.
Right. You chase. And, I think that the LPR is a great example of that. And it does a couple things. One, so I think of an example recently where we had, it sounds crazy to say, but you still have bank robberies in 2025.
No Tommy guns, I don't think.
But people are robbing banks.
Yeah.
And we had a bank robbery, and we were able to identify and apprehend a suspect in a very short amount of time, which is great on a couple levels. One, when the public hears, oh my God, the bank was robbed, right? To know that you have taken that danger out of the system quickly is completely amazing. Like, it has a calming effect on the public. People are not running around lighting their hair on fire because there's a looming menace out there. But back to your point, the other thing that it does is, instead of spending 3 weeks, 3 months doing an investigation that ultimately, because our guys are good, will lead to an arrest and a prosecution, you're spending 3 days or 3 hours even. And with all of that saved time, you can now dedicate it to doing other things, to doing the things that count, which is being engaged in the community. And then you really do the magic thing, which is, through community engagement, you can head off crime before it even happens. And it's not through technology, right? Immediately, like, we're not talking about Minority Report. We're talking about good old fashioned community engagement, being there and being able to head off things before they happen, or convince people through, good old fashioned community engagement that there's better things to do with your time than commit violent crime.
Yeah, could agree more. And I think you're right. I think when people think technology is empowering the police to do these things, they think Minority Report oftentimes, but also, like, they're driving a car, that's technology. They're wearing a body camera oftentimes. There's all kinds of pieces of technology that help do very different things. The goal ultimately is to have the human interaction, because I think that's the thing that we've seen the primary research is very clear on, is that when you put more officers on the street to do their job, you actually see the economic benefit to the community. Officers pay for themselves because they're doing these things, like they're building trust with the community. And the technology, frankly, just allows them to prioritize where they're going to go spend their time, and hopefully do it on the things that really matter, and less of this chasing things based on hearsay or what subjective factors. Like, let's just get them working on the things we really want them to work on.
Yeah.
And I also love to, if you wouldn't mind, I'd love to hear a little bit more about kind of like the longer term vision that you have for a place like Allentown. Because yes, we want to use tools, we want to stop these immediate problems. Agreed. That's oftentimes, I think, why people turn to Flock immediately, as they go, man, we've got fill in the blank type of crime problem. We need some tools that help fill the gap, because maybe hiring officers is very difficult, or maybe there are some other challenges that they have, and technology can be a great opportunity for that. But the long-term impact of freeing up these resources, I mean, how do you envision Allentown 5-10 years from now, presuming that you can kind of build compounding benefits from seeing this better resource allocation and doing more investment in the things that you want people spending their time on?
Well, I think, again, it flows from safety, right? So I was talking to somebody earlier today about how important safety in a community is, because that's the thing that promotes investment. If you are a real estate investor or you are a business owner, you don't want to invest your capital in a place where it is at risk, right? Particularly if it's all downside risk. So creating safe environments promotes business investment, which promotes economic growth, which promotes job creation. Like, it all becomes a very good cycle that starts with safety. When we think about that long-term vision for a city like Allentown, we've seen historic reductions in crime over the past 10 years. Allentown, like I was talking about the kind of lows that it had hit in the past. In the 90s and the early part of the 2000s, we saw homicide rates that were much higher than our community wanted to see. We saw violent crime like assault and robbery was high. We've seen that decrease through good police work over the past decade, but we've also seen substantial declines in violent crime over the past couple of years under Chief Roca's leadership.
Yeah.
And again, that goes back to well-trained officers,
Definitely.
sufficient officers using the appropriate technology to help them respond to violent crime as it occurs, but also try to predict where it's going to happen. I think when I think about promoting and safety often is not, it's not just the numbers, right?
Yeah.
We can tell people that, so Allentown had in 2024 its lowest homicide rate since 1989.
Incredible.
So what is that, 35 years? Yeah. Just absolutely incredible to see our numbers drop to not just single digit homicides, but 4 homicides in a city of 130,000
really great
people. It was a huge thing for us to to be able to hang our hat on the success of our police. We also saw reductions in shooting, in shots fired incidents, in aggravated assault, etc. But importantly, I think it's creating a feeling of safety.
Yeah.
So when you have those crimes, you want to see the elimination of violent crime as flock safety. We want to see the elimination of those crimes as well. It's a lofty goal for a mayor to say that, but fundamentally what we want to do is for our residents to feel safe. And I think one of the like really fascinating things about acoustical detection technology, gunshot detection technology, flock safety, is that every mayor has this experience. Somebody says, "Hey, I'm hearing gunshots in my neighborhood all the time," and you don't necessarily want to like say to the person, "Well, actually," but you can in a way, and you can say like, well, "Look, what you thought was a gunshot was actually like fireworks,"
right?
Or like we know from our officers that they responded to your call and they didn't find any shell casings, but now we also have the evidence from our technology to show us that there was no gunshot, that maybe it was a car backfiring, maybe it was something, but we know, we can tell the difference between those things. We have the technology to support that. And when our narrative starts to become, hey, it's safe, and the thing that you thought you heard was not actually the thing that you thought you heard, they can start building on a new narrative of safety, right?
100%.
And it's not a focus on the negative. It's, hey, when somebody tells me that my neighborhood's unsafe, I can say, well, no, actually, it's like we haven't heard gunshots here in an entire year, and whatever you think you know that you're reading on Facebook, I can tell you it's not true, and I have the evidence to back me up.
Yeah, and I think you're 100% right on this point, because obviously people, at least my belief is, people don't always make a decision based on the data that they get put in front of them. They have the feeling of either it's right or it's wrong, and then the data helps confirm that for them. But there's oftentimes it's an emotional response to the feeling of either danger or safety. And so if you just present them with the pure numbers, they may not react at all, or like, hey, the officers didn't find any shell casings, which is factual. It's like, well, that doesn't help me feel any safer. But as you build enough time and trust with the population here, with individuals, with a certain person who's calling in, you can now point to them to all the different factors, and at the same time, they can go, you know what, you're right. Actually, I haven't even heard these gunshots in the same way that I thought I was hearing them, or I was just misinterpreting whatever. It's just a very different conversation when you can help change not just like the statistical numbers on a sheet, but the way people actually experience the town. Like that's got to be a tremendous feeling as a mayor.
Well, and the trust factor is fascinating. I don't think we've gotten there yet, but it's what we envision for the future, is that when our officers are out in the community, the person who might have reported the firecrackers as gunshots in the past, they know the data, right? They're telling their neighbors that, and they can point to the officer and say,
go talk to this guy.
Yeah, like what? Like, you might not believe me, the neighbor, but now we know this guy. Like before, if he was just somebody who was responding to a call for shots fired and he didn't find casings, the neighborhood might have been like, well, he didn't look hard enough, or
right.
But now they're like, oh yeah, I know that guy,
right.
And I know, like, if he says there's no casings, I trust him, right? And probably it was something else. Those are the flywheel effects that we really look forward to in cities like Allentown.
I think that's the flywheel effect that cities all over the country are looking for, which is, again, it goes back to that virtuous cycle we were talking about, which is, yes, public safety is an imperative. It's a backdrop. But so are other things. And as a mayor, you care about these things. You care about education, as you said. You care about the environment and the air quality. You're a marathon runner. Obviously, you want to be able to breathe the air as you're running around outside. We care about all these other things, the economic development of a place. But if you don't have safety, you can't have all of the other things that
Correct.
are there too. But the beauty is, once you can actually invest in safety, as you have done, and you start to see historic crime drops and the feeling of safety start to increase in a place, all those other imperatives, they naturally want to come to those. Businesses want to be there. People want to live there. Like, it's much, much easier to get then the revenue from other sources to invest in your parks and your schools and all the things that you want to invest in. And that to me feels like, whoa, that's a really exciting unlock for a city, because the compounding interest again just grows.
Yeah.
And then the city, I think, really does get to that place where you just said that's the dream, that this is a city that is representative of many cities across the country.
Yep.
In size and scope and population and all these things. And that's what we all want. We want to live in an environment where, man, I feel safe, and I can walk on the street and know my neighbor, and I feel great about it.
Yeah. And I think that there's, for city leaders, I mean, I think that there are, in 2025, we have like really smart mayors, we have really smart police chiefs, like,
That's right,
who know what they're doing. And there's, again, when you get in the cycle of just like chasing your tail a little bit, or you're playing whack-a-mole, it takes you off your game,
Yeah.
right? You can't focus on what really matters. You might be you might know what you're doing, but if you can't actually like focus your energy, you're not able to do it. And that's where the technologies that are starting to show up for us allow us to focus our time and energy on the things that truly count and the things that truly matter. And I think we're in this interesting generation where the technologies are starting to show up to allow people to do the things that they always wish they could do.
Yeah.
But also that the leaders in place know how to use those technologies.
Agreed.
Right. So I'm like, in my case with Chief Roca, like, he deeply understands how that technology can help support his efforts to make a safer community, and how the existence, I think you talked earlier about the existence of a technology like that lets a police officer do like real police work.
Right.
Like when we can get to the point where technology lets us, respond appropriately to a report of gunfire when it's not actually gunfire, police feel better when they don't have to like chase after things that are inventions. Right?
Totally.
So I'm grateful that we are in this new era where there's things like license plate reader technology and gunshot detection technology. It helps us organize the talents that we have in place.
Yeah, I love that. Let's end on a couple of these thoughts right here. So one thread here, policy wise, how do you as a mayor ensure that like you're doing the things in lockstep with the police chief to align and make sure that like as you're investing in the future of Allentown that you're fully aligned on what he needs, resource allocation, making sure that we're not putting anything in place that makes his job harder, while at the same time I know you care a lot about civil liberties, so ensuring that you're building trust and you're protecting civil liberties. How do you think about the balance of like the policy aspect of making sure that they have what they need, but making sure that like we're doing it in a way that is thoughtful about the citizenry here in the city?
So this is part of it, and again, you get back to making sure that mayors are appropriately resourced and they're skilled in the areas that need that attention. But we're grateful to be part of Bloomberg Philanthropies City Data Alliance. We're in the third cohort, and we're developing a citywide data strategy that helps us build on these pillars of data quality, data use, data collaboration, and fundamentally data literacy. So making sure that we deeply understand data and that we make sure that humans are that our work around data is human centered.
Right.
So when you talk about civil liberties, it's making sure that there is active dialogue between our law office, our police department, and our governing bodies like city councils to have a sense of how data will be used, right? And we're appreciative not just of the protection of the rights and privacy of our residents, but to make sure that those data are used appropriately.
Totally.
And not just for like the focused deterrence, so that you're not over policing, quote unquote over policing a neighborhood that doesn't need additional policing, but that those data can be used in an effective way to provide for the needs of the residents.
Totally.
I think the other important thing about data is that it helps us. We talked earlier about telling a compelling story, that you can't just dump the data on the residents. Those data do help tell a compelling story to decision makers. So if we're able to quantify what's happening in our neighborhoods, and we're able to attach that to smart investments, that helps our city council and our taxpayers know that they're getting value for money.
Yes.
right? Like that's fundamentally what we have to do here is we're balancing investments in public safety and investments in public infrastructure against making that taxpayer dollar go a little bit further. So we work in lockstep, I think, as you said, with our police chief to make sure that he's able to access the tools that he needs in a way that respects the needs of our community.
If you were giving advice to another elected official who's evaluating the trade-off of investing in public safety technology with their police chief, what advice would you give them? Like, what things should they be evaluating? What things should they be looking for? What would be some of the advice you'd give them?
So I'm a big believer in. I guess it depends on the size of the city. Like Allentown is a city that has a police department. We have an information systems team. We have a law department. We have a finance department. I'm a big believer in bringing everybody around the table to evaluate all decisions from those various different perspectives.
Yeah.
I'm envious of larger cities with much larger budgets and much larger staffs who can bring in greater levels of expertise around decision making like that. And I would say to smaller cities, bring the stakeholders that are available to you to the table to make those decisions. I think that you have to be willing to take chances on investments in technology, and then you have to like really dedicate resources to it. Technology is a tool, and it has to be used appropriately, and it has to be used right.
Right.
You can't like
buy it and put it on the shelf.
Yeah, it needs constant attention, but it pays off significantly. So I would be intentional about the evaluation of those various different technologies. I'd also make sure that, and all mayors know this intuitively, like make sure that you're managing expectations as well, right? Like when we invest in a public safety technology like body-worn cameras, it doesn't mean that like all bad things are going to stop happening, right? If we invest in license plate readers, it doesn't mean that people are going to stop speeding in our city. Those technologies are tools that help you get to a place, but it doesn't happen overnight, and it doesn't happen without a lot of hard work.
All of that's true, and yet you've had incredible results here in the city of Allentown too. So I do want to give you credit and the chief of police for a lot of real incredible work on that. But I like what you said, that bring all the right stakeholders to the table. Make sure you have an evaluation framework for like what does success even look like. Yeah. Be willing to take a chance sometimes on technologies, but like with the thought process of how do we actually utilize these technologies, not just buy them and then hope that they work and then walk away, and then also like the expectation management. I mean, all of that is just, I think, really good advice. One other thing I'd love for you to just end on, if you would, for a company like Flock or any technology vendor who wants to work with cities and make sure that we are actually delivering on the value that you want to promise to your residents and actually deliver to your, like, what advice would you give to us? What are things that companies should be thinking about if we want to work with more cities to help you deliver on your mission to residents of the community?
I think that, so although Allentown is a good model for mid-sized cities across the country, and I can tell you this from my experience in economic development, we always used to look for comparable cities.
Yeah,
right?
sure.
It's like, where's the Allentown of Illinois, or where's the Allentown of New Mexico? And they don't exist. Like every city has a unique story, yeah. And every city is worth the investment from the perspective of anybody who's selling any kind of technology or solution to a municipal government. Like, take the time to get to know what's driving that city and what their true needs are.
Yeah.
And mayors are good folks to talk to, but it's worth getting into the communities a little bit as well and understanding, doing somewhat of a dive to understand what the needs are of the community. Mayors get a lot of solicitous emails, right? Like, there's a lot of people who want mayors to buy some technology or the other. We don't get a lot of people who are willing to invest time and energy into understanding our communities. We are public servants. Like, our fundamental responsibility is public safety. It's public infrastructure, but it's fundamentally serving our publics. And the reason we even decide to do this is because we think we can do something good for the residents that we serve. And if there's a tool available that gets it, I think it's easier for us to say yes.
I love that. Let's end there.
Cool.
Mayor Tuerk, thank you so much for your time today. We really appreciate it. And if you are in the area, you should come visit Allentown because it is lovely. It is a great place. And who doesn't love crayons? So let's go.
Fue un gran placer hablar contigo.
Love it. Thank you very much.